Hello, my dear ones. We have another winter evening by the fireplace, and our series is Psychology by the Fireplace. And what question did I prepare for you this time? I'm reading it. Please tell me, is it bad to be selfish? People always tell me I have an inflated ego, but it feels to me like I simply know how to take care of myself. If I care for myself, am I really a very self-centered person? Why did I choose this question? Not to offend the author. Of course, we wrote it through together. I simply want to talk about how much gets mixed up here. Ego, egocentrism, egoism, everything thrown into one pile. There is a lot of confusion. And people often ask me too, is there such a thing as healthy selfishness? Yes, of course. And is a selfish person always bad? Some psychologists even make videos saying egoism is good, egoism is great, and you should be selfish. But here, of course, we must distinguish the scientific term egoism from how an ordinary person understands it. Because if you don't, for someone it becomes a justification for being obsessed with themselves and a justification for egocentrism. So when we discuss this, you need to understand there is ego, there is egoism, and there is egocentrism. These concepts are very close. They all circle around each other, but they are not the same thing at all. If we talk about the ego, psychoanalysis works with it a lot, and a major contribution to these ideas, ego, egoism, egocentrism, was made by Jung. The ego is simply one part of how the human psyche is structured. Jung distinguished the self, meaning the wholeness of a person, who you truly are. And the ego is how consciousness is formed. The conscious I, the way a person recognizes themselves, it is that part of the psyche that becomes aware of you mostly through society, through social demands, who you are, how others see you, what job you have, what expectations are placed on you, how well you meet them, how capable and successful you look in the eyes of the world. Everything the conscious mind can grasp forms this ego, but that is still not the whole person, because the self, the wholeness of a person with all their dreams, feelings, subtle movements of the soul, delicate perceptions, desires, the ability to love, this is not easy to touch. It is not easy to understand or fully realize. And toward this wholeness, toward knowing your full self, a person learns and strives their whole life. But do we need the ego then? Of course we do. Without the ego, without that guiding center in your interactions with other people, you simply wouldn't be able to survive. And as the ego develops and matures, what psychology calls healthy egoism is formed, something every person needs a little of. In psychology, it means a person learns not to dissolve into others, because it is truly frightening when you completely dissolve into other people. Where do you lose yourself then? You are here to live your own life. You are not meant to live someone else's life. Healthy egoism also teaches self-care and healthy boundaries. Does any person who lives with dignity, respects themselves, and understands the value their life needs? Yes, because you came here to live your life. Otherwise, it becomes meaningless. Even love, even the ability to love selflessly, it is still lived through you for your life's path. But if you dissolve into another person and start living for them, you don't fulfill the task your soul came here with, to learn to love, to live, because you are no longer living your own life. So from this point of view, egoism is not something bad. It simply means your ego, your conscious I, The part that knows itself in society acts like the captain of a huge ship, which is you as a whole, as yourself. You come here as a whole being and learn to live among the scenery of life, other people and situations. And the ego is your social captain, but it is not the ship itself. It is not your wholeness. It is the part that helps you navigate. And of course, as this ego is formed and matures, that healthy egoism is formed as well. Then, as a person does not betray themselves, develops, and keeps moving toward living their own life, toward recognizing their self, becoming more whole, seeing their real dreams, calling, desires, and aspirations, gradually this egoism becomes less necessary because you don't have to fight so hard for your boundaries anymore. Wisdom starts doing it automatically. You won't dissolve into others. You already have enough love. You don't need to earn someone's love by disappearing inside another person, and so on, and so on. But at the stage when a person is not allowed to form a healthy ego, to grow that social captain, when their relationship with society is unhealthy, in the family, among friends, among teachers and adults, when there was strong suppression, then egocentrism can develop. So, ego in itself can be good and healthy. It helps you live. Healthy egoism helps you live too, without turning into something that harms other people. But egocentrism is a completely unhealthy state. Psychology distinguishes this ego and healthy egoism that supports life versus egocentrism. And then what is egocentrism? Is it an inflated ego? The phrase inflated ego is actually not correct. In psychology, we speak about ego inflation, an inflation of the ego and of the person's sense of wholeness. And paradoxically, it is not that the ego is truly strong, it is often a deeply suppressed ego. And to compensate for that suppression, a person stops being a healthy captain. A healthy person understands the ego is my captain, and I myself am the beautiful ship sailing in the sea of life. I meet other ships, other whole beings. I live, I communicate, I learn to navigate, not collide, choose routes, interact. But a person with egocentrism begins to devalue everything. They start to think they are the center of the universe. It's not enough for them to simply know they are one sheep among others and respect themselves for that. In reality, the egocentrists devalue themselves inside, and they desperately need something to cling to. So this suppressed, immature ego, instead of growing and maturing, begins to swell, not in the sense of true inner strength, like I knew my values and only my values matter. No, on the contrary, they feel small inside, and so they swell like an empty balloon because it didn't form properly. And to compensate for not knowing how to live, how to interact, how to build boundaries, it begins to seem that the solution is to declare yourself the center of the universe. They stop seeing the world as an interaction between different whole beings. They begin to perceive everything only through themselves. I am the center of this world. And whatever they do is right, because for an immature person it is terrifying to think, I might be wrong. They can't allow themselves the right to make mistakes. It's scary. If I'm wrong, then what? How will I be accepted? So the egocentrist stops living for themselves in a healthy way. They simply declare themselves the center of the world. and demand recognition. At some point, this can even grow into narcissistic personality disorder. But that is an even more complex topic because false altruism and many other mechanisms can appear there. We will definitely talk about that one day. But for now, you should understand the difference. Healthy egoism is something you can allow yourself, not living for others, not dissolving into others, while still being kind, responsive, and a good person. But if egocentrism has begun, if you suddenly feel that everything revolves around you, that other people are not significant, not valuable, not interesting, and only you are right, only your opinion is the truth, for no clear reason, and everything must revolve around you, and you are the main center, then it will be difficult to become happy. Because with whom will you build your happiness? If you are the center of the universe, that is likely a path to loneliness because other people no longer interest you. But all of this can be healed because even inside egocentrism, there is still a soul that came here to learn to love. That ability does not disappear and it can all be healed. So be honest with yourself, honest with others, attentive and not judging. And everything will be okay. Things will settle. That's it, my dear ones. This is how I explain the difference between egoism and egocentrism. Now you reflect and observe. If something still interests you on this topic, write your questions in the comments or email me. And I love you. Bye bye. Until we meet again.